Everyone says it's impossible until someone comes along who doesn't know that and does it. Albert Einstein. Before we begin, here's a small ritual. Write in the comments one word that accurately describes your current state. Sign it, and let's get started. You know that feeling when you wake up and something's missing. There's no disaster. No one hurt you today. But there's this quiet weight, like a fog sitting on your chest. You move, you work, you smile. But inside, nothing. A numbness that's hard to explain. And the worst part is, you've done everything they told you. You read the books, you went to therapy, you tried to think positive, write affirmations, practice gratitude, and for a while, maybe, it helped. But then it came back. That same emptiness, that same question. Why does nothing change? Let me tell you something most psychologists won't. You're not broken, you're trapped inside a system of beliefs that taught you to smile over your wounds, to label your fear as resistance, your anger as toxicity, your sadness as low vibration. They told you to chase light and call it healing, but no one said what to do with the dark. Most people walking around today are edited versions of themselves. They cut out the parts that didn't fit, the rage, the grief, the shame, and they replaced them with a mask called "I'm fine." But that pain you feel, that's not failure. It's memory. It's the parts of you still waiting to be seen. And no, you can't fix it with another 5-step program. You don't need fixing. You need truth. See, as long as you believe that healing means removing the pain, you're stuck in illusion. Healing isn't about erasing. It's about facing. It's not about being more positive. It's about being more real. Most people think they want freedom, but what they really want is comfort, and those two don't live in the same room. This may sound harsh, but someone has to say it. You can't heal by running. Not from the past, not from yourself. And until you stop chasing the version of you that never hurts, you'll never meet the one that can handle the truth. If these words hit something deep, subscribe to the channel, not because it's trending, but because this space is for those who are done pretending. If you feel this is about you, subscribe. Let the algorithm bring this truth to the ones who are ready to meet their shadow. If you know what I'm talking about, subscribe. Let's make sure this reaches the people who can't keep running from themselves. Because here's the part no one told you. Your pain isn't in the way. It is the way. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why. You've been told that your problem is mindset, that you just need to reframe your thoughts, raise your vibration, visualize a better life. But no one told you that the mind can't heal what the body still remembers. And your body remembers everything. The betrayals you brushed off, the shame you swallowed, the fear you pretended wasn't there. All of it lives under the surface, running the show while your conscious mind tries to stay positive. This is why nothing truly changes, because it's not about what you think, it's about what you believe. And most of those beliefs were formed when you were too young to even question them. The truth is, most of what's blocking you isn't your fault. You didn't choose the family system you were born into. You didn't choose the roles you were forced to play just to be accepted. And you didn't choose the belief that your worth depends on how little you need, how quiet you stay, or how much you give. These are survival strategies, not flaws. But here's where the trap is. At some point, those strategies outlive their purpose. And instead of protecting you, they start suffocating you. That's when the inner conflict begins. One part of you wants to break free, but another is terrified that freedom will cost you connection, love, safety. That's the invisible war no one sees. You show up, do the work, go through the motions. But inside, There's this exhausting battle between your wounded self and your aware self. One wants to move forward. The other wants to survive. And no book, no coach, no clever technique can resolve that war until you stop pathologizing the parts of you that are scared. Because they're not weak, they're loyal. They've kept you alive. And until you turn toward them instead of trying to silence them, they will keep dragging you back to the same place, over and over again. This is what no one told you. You can't heal what you still judge. You can't integrate what you secretly want to erase. Your shadow isn't the enemy. It's the parts of you that had to hide to stay loved. And now they're asking to be seen, not shamed. This is why so much of therapy doesn't land, because it treats the symptom, not the system. It focuses on managing behavior instead of understanding the root. And you can't build a new life on top of a foundation made of fear, guilt, and abandonment. Real healing begins when you stop trying to become someone else and start remembering who you were before you were told who to be. That version of you still exists, not in the mind, but in the body, not in words, but in sensation. And every time you override your truth to stay comfortable, you lose touch with it a little more. That's why you feel numb. That's why you keep searching. Because deep down, you know there's more to you than this. Not a better version, a buried one, not a future self, a forgotten self. And it's time to dig. You've probably asked yourself at some point, if I've done so much inner work, why do I still feel stuck? Why do the same patterns keep playing out, no matter how much I learn or grow? The answer is simpler and harder than it seems. You don't live what you know. You live what you believe. And belief isn't a conscious process. It's embedded. It's stored in your nervous system, your emotional reflexes, your instinctive reactions. That's why intellectual insight often changes nothing. You can understand your childhood wounding perfectly and still find yourself repeating the same cycles. Not because you're weak, not because you're not trying hard enough, but because you haven't yet met the parts of you that made those cycles feel safe. The mind wants change. The body wants safety. And to the body, familiarity is safety, even if it hurts. That's the paradox. You can consciously desire freedom, intimacy, peace, and unconsciously sabotage all of it, simply because your system has linked pain to love, chaos to connection, self-erasure to survival. So when you start to move in a new direction, your unconscious pulls the brakes, not to punish you, but to protect you, based on outdated maps that were written long before you had any choice in the matter. This is why healing can feel like dying, because in a way, it is. It's the death of the version of you that survived through adaptation. The one who kept quiet to avoid conflict. The one who overfunctioned to feel needed. The one who became whatever others wanted just to avoid being left. That part of you is not wrong. It's sacred. It did what it had to do. But now, every time you betray your truth to stay in someone's good graces, you're not just being polite, you're reliving your own abandonment by your own hand. The pain you're feeling is not because you're broken. It's because something inside you knows this isn't who you really are. And it's tired of pretending, tired of performing, tired of abandoning itself for the comfort of others. That exhaustion is not a weakness. It's a signal, a call to stop, to listen, to grieve the cost of fitting in, because every mask you've worn had a price, and that price was you. If you've reached this point and something inside you is starting to stir, you're not alone. This moment, this exact tension you're feeling between who you've been and who you really are. That's the doorway, and no one can walk through it for you. But you're allowed to stand there shaking. You're allowed to feel scared. Just don't walk away, because behind that fear is the part of you that's still alive, the one that remembers, the one that knows. I didn't come here to survive. I came here to be free. Most people never question the idea of impossible. They just accept it as fact, as a boundary drawn by someone else. But impossible isn't real. It's inherited. You absorbed it from the adults who taught you not to dream too big, not to speak too loud, not to want too much. You absorbed it from a world that punishes authenticity and rewards obedience. And without even realizing it, you started building your life not around your desires, but around your fears, around what wouldn't upset others, around what seemed acceptable, safe, reasonable. And somewhere in that process, you stopped asking what was true for you. You started asking what was allowed. That's how the illusion takes hold. It doesn't come as a loud no. It shows up as hesitation, as self-doubt, as a quiet voice that says, "Who do you think you are?" Every time you've shrunk yourself to avoid rejection, every time you've played small so someone else could feel big, you've reinforced the idea that your real self is too much, too intense, too emotional, too sensitive. And so you kept adjusting, kept adapting, until you forgot what it felt like to be whole. And the culture loves this, because a fragmented person is easy to control. If you're constantly questioning your worth, you'll keep buying, chasing, proving. You'll think your freedom lies in more achievements, more validation, more improvement. But that's just another trap. The system doesn't want you healed. It wants you compliant. It wants you productive, not powerful. And it will give you just enough crumbs of relief to keep you chasing the next fix, without ever touching the core wound. Here's the thing most therapists won't say out loud. The system isn't neutral. It shapes what kind of healing is allowed. It celebrates coping, not transformation. It teaches you how to manage your dysfunction just enough to keep functioning. But real healing, that threatens the whole structure. Because a person who's no longer afraid to be themselves can't be manipulated. They can't be guilted into silence. They can't be bribed with approval. They know who they are. And that kind of knowing doesn't come from books. It comes from facing the dark. You're not here to be improved. You're here to be revealed. Not in the eyes of others, but in your own. The version of you that's buried under layers of conditioning isn't gone. It's waiting. Waiting for you to stop looking outside for permission. Waiting for you to stop pretending that playing small is noble. It's not. It's survival, and you've survived long enough. The time has come to remember that what you've called impossible is just unpracticed power. And the more you stop negotiating with your fear, the more that power becomes real. No one tells you that healing will make you lonelier at first. Because the moment you start seeing through the roles, the masks, the games, you also start seeing how much of your life was built on keeping them alive. You start noticing the conversations that feel hollow, the relationships that drain you, the spaces where your silence was the price of belonging. And the more honest you become, the less you fit into places that were never meant to hold the real you. That's not failure, that's clarity. And clarity always comes with loss. Loss of illusions, loss of comfort, loss of people who were only connected to your performance, not your truth. This is the part most avoid, because it's terrifying to realize how much of your identity was shaped by the need to be accepted. But here's the paradox. The more you let go of who you had to be, the more space you make for who you actually are. And yes, it's uncomfortable, but it's also the only path to real peace. Not the peace of everything being easy, but the peace of no longer being at war with yourself. Your shadow, the parts you've disowned, denied, pushed into the dark, holds the key to this peace. Not because it's pleasant, but because it's true. Inside, your rage is your boundary. Inside, your fear is your desire. Inside, your grief is your capacity to love. You don't have to conquer the shadow. You have to integrate it. And that means meeting it without shame, seeing it not as something wrong, but as something unheard. That's where transformation begins, not in perfection, but in permission. The permission to feel what you feel, to want what you want, to stop apologizing for being human. Most systems teach you to regulate, to redirect, to manage your emotions, but they rarely teach you to understand them. They pathologize what's raw, what's intense, what's inconvenient. But those emotions are messengers. They don't need to be silenced. They need to be heard. And when you finally listen, not with judgment, not with analysis, but with presence, you begin to unravel the lie that you are too much. Because the truth is, you were never too much. You were just surrounded by people who didn't know how to hold depth. This is not about blaming the past. It's about breaking the spell. The spell that says your worth depends on your performance. That says your value is measured by how little you need or how much you give. That says your truth is dangerous. It's not. Your truth is sacred. And the more you speak it, the more you stand in it. The more you stop negotiating it, the more life starts to reflect something real. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped abandoning yourself in the name of being loved. You can't integrate what you still reject, and most people are trying to become whole while still cutting off pieces of themselves they were taught to fear. They want peace, but only if it looks calm. They want truth, but only if it doesn't shake their identity. But integration isn't neat. It's not graceful. It's chaotic, uncomfortable, and deeply personal. Because to truly reclaim yourself, you have to turn toward what you've spent a lifetime avoiding. You have to face the parts of you that were exiled, not because they were bad, but because they were inconvenient for someone else. This is where most people stop, right at the edge of their breakthrough. Because the mind says, you've done enough, don't go there. But the body remembers where you split, where you swallowed the scream, held back the tears, walked away from your own need for connection, just to feel safe. And until you go back to those places, not to relive them, but to reclaim what you left behind, you will keep circling the same emotional terrain. You'll call it growth, but it will feel hollow. You'll call it strength, but it will feel numb. Because true strength is not about how much you can suppress. It's about how deeply you can meet what hurts without abandoning yourself. This is where paradox becomes the path. The more you allow your pain to speak, the less it controls you. The more you let yourself feel what you've been taught to fear, the less it runs your life in the background. That's not weakness, that's power. Quiet, steady, grounded power. The kind that can sit with grief without needing to fix it. The kind that can face shame without collapsing. The kind that knows this feeling is not the end, it's the threshold. You've spent so long trying to fix what never needed fixing, trying to make your fear go away instead of understanding what it's protecting, trying to silence the inner critic instead of asking whose voice it really is, trying to let go of your pain without listening to what it's asking you to remember. But pain is not here to punish you. It's here to reconnect you to yourself, to the parts you left behind when you thought you had to choose between being accepted and being whole. And now that you've made it this far, the question isn't, how do I fix myself? The question is, am I willing to sit with all of me. Even the parts that still ache, even the parts that still don't trust. Because the goal isn't to become perfect. The goal is to become honest. And honesty doesn't always feel good at first, but it's the only ground where real life can begin. Not the life built on roles and rules, but the life that feels like yours. Finally, there's something most people never admit out loud. They say they want to heal, but deep down, they want to stay the same. Not because they're lazy, not because they don't care, but because staying the same is familiar, predictable, safe, even if it's painful. Because pain you know feels less scary than joy you don't trust. That's the cruel irony. The nervous system clings to what's known, even when it's killing you slowly. And that's why most change fails. Not because the methods are wrong, but because the person using them is still in negotiation with their fear. Fear doesn't leave just because you understand where it came from. It doesn't vanish because you decide to be brave. Fear loosens its grip only when you prove, again and again, that you can stay with yourself in discomfort, that you won't run, that you won't abandon, that you won't override the signals your body is sending just to make someone else more comfortable. And that kind of self-loyalty, it's rare, because it means letting go of the hope that someone else will save you. It means becoming the one who stays, even when it's hard, even when it's lonely, even when it would be easier to pretend again. This is the initiation most people avoid. The slow, quiet, difficult return to self. Not the version of you that performs well, but the one that never got a voice. The one that got locked away so early you forgot they existed. But they've been there all along, waiting for a moment like this. A moment when you're raw enough to hear them. When your old tools don't work anymore. When the masks start to feel suffocating and the truth is louder than the fear. That's when something real begins. That's when transformation isn't a choice. It's a necessity. And yes, it's going to cost you. It will cost you illusions, relationships, identities. It will strip away the comfort of pretending and leave you face to face with what you've avoided for years. But what you get in return is something no one can give you. A sense of self that doesn't collapse under pressure. A connection to your body that doesn't lie. A presence that doesn't need to prove. That kind of self is not built. It's uncovered. And the more you meet yourself in truth, the less power your old stories have. Because here's what no one tells you. Your pain is not a problem to be solved. It's a portal, a map, a mirror. And when you stop treating it like a flaw and start treating it like a guide, you stop running in circles. You stop trying to fix what was never broken. You begin to relate to yourself with reverence instead of resentment. And from that place, everything changes. Not overnight, not perfectly, but deeply, in a way that no one can take from you. If you've reached this point and feel something shifting, something waking up, write it, speak it, claim it, not for applause, but as a commitment. If you recognize yourself in these words, write in the comments, "I no longer run from pain." Let's see how many of us are ready for the truth. If you feel like it's time to meet your shadow, write, "My darkness is my power." Let's build a space where depth is welcome. If you're ready to stop performing, write, "I drop the masks." Let's see who's done hiding. And if something in you cracked open during this video, write, "I accept my shadow." Let that be your promise to yourself. This is only the beginning. Not the beginning of a journey to become someone else, but the beginning of remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. And there's more, much more, but we'll go there only when you're ready. For now, stay close to your truth. And trust, it's not impossible, it's unfamiliar, and you were made for it. We're sure you've discovered plenty of value, so subscribe now and stay connected.